What's up, guys? Hey guys! What's up, guys? Today we're gonna be telling some scary stories. Okay, hello. Today I'm gonna be telling some scary stories. I spent the last hour fighting with this shelf and I needed to feel something, so I decided to kind of go back to some of the scary stories I used to tell when I was a kid. And I realized a lot of them, not that scary. There's one super scary story that I'm not going to tell. So if you want something super scary, I will talk later in the video a little bit about it, but you probably won't find what you're looking for here. Okay, this one is really, really scary. It was so scary when I was a kid. I hated scary stories, but I loved telling them. This one was a really good one too. I did have to look it up to kind of remember, and it's also weird because there's so many different versions of things. There's so many different versions of scary stories, and it's really fun things that are passed like word of mouth. I do not like scary stories, I do not like scary things, but when you're a kid, it's really fun to tell them. My favorite one to tell, I'm not going to tell here because it's a little too scary. Okay, so this is one we told. Okay, let me see if I can get this to tighten. There we go. Okay, so this is one I told all the time on the playground. Click, clack. Once upon a time, there was a mom driving her kids home from school. On the way home, she ended up unexpectedly stopped on the railroad tracks. Her car wouldn't move, and the train was coming. The train plowed through the car. The police came, and both of the children were long gone. But for the woman, they only found the bottom half of her body. They searched far and wide, but they couldn't find the other half. Eventually, it became a closed case. However, the children of the town knew something was wrong. They had stories and myths they would tell each other. They would say not to stay out after dark, or click, clack would get you. The children were afraid, and all of the children warned each other not to go outside after dark because there was something out there. One day, a mom sent her daughter to get groceries after school. She gave her the money, she gave her a list, and sent her out. The daughter dutifully went to the store and picked out all the groceries, but by the time she was coming home, the sun was already setting. As she walked home, it got darker and darker. As it got darker and darker outside, she started to hear a noise behind her. It went click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. And as she turned around, nothing was there. She decided to keep going, but she heard it behind her again. Click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. She turned around. Nothing was there. She kept going, but the sound started getting louder and louder and faster and faster. She started running. She kept hearing the noise behind her getting louder and louder and faster, going as fast as she could to get away. The click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. She kept running. She went home. She started pounding on her front door. Her mom had already fallen asleep and she had locked the door. She was pounding. She was screaming for her mom to open up. And when she turned around, this time, she saw the top half of a woman holding herself up on her nails. The next morning, the mom came out and opened the door. Written in blood were the words, "Mom, why didn't you open the door?" Her daughter was never seen again. On to the next story. Okay, this next story is one that either my great-grandma or my great-aunt Patty told me. I'm assuming to try and dissuade me from getting tattoos. I am team tattoo. I have one. So, yeah. Without further ado, I tell you the tattoo artist. In this story, a young girl decided that she wanted to get a tattoo. She was fresh out of high school. She didn't have a lot of money. and she didn't really want to face the scrutiny from her parents or her peers. And so she decided she was going to get a back piece. And she found an artist who had been highly recommended. He had very good reviews, and she was able to contact him through Craigslist. She got his email. They started emailing back and forth. She had sent him designs and ideas, and she was getting so excited. He ended up sending her an address, and she had scheduled the appointment for her tattoo. When she went to the address, it was a beautiful little house down in a suburb. And when she knocked on the door, the tattoo artist was there to answer. He was a big man, covered head to toe in tattoos. He invited her in, and then invited her downstairs to see where he did his tattoos. She went downstairs, and wall to wall there was tattoo art. He had her sit in the chair and showed her the machines, the ink, everything that would be a part of the process. She asked him how he felt about his tattoos, and he said he was getting tired of the scrutiny. He wanted a fresh start. At that point, she didn't really understand what he meant, but he had her turn around and rest in the chair. Then she fell asleep. When she woke up, she felt a burning pain, a screaming sensation from her skin. She reached back to feel. Nothing was there. All of the skin was missing from her back. She was chained to the chair. There was nothing she could do but sit there and scream. The tattoo artist walked out of the house, covered in a fresh, new set of skin, with no tattoos to be seen. Team tattoo, but I will say this story was scary, like hearing around the campfire as a kid. But pretty much the next day, I realized nothing in that story was realistic. Because never would I ever go to the basement of a tattoo artist I met on Craigslist. So, and if anyone wanted to hear the scary story I was talking about in the beginning that was too scary to tell, this next story is so scary. I'm actually not going to tell it. When I was in elementary school, we had to listen to this story. And I'm not going to tell it because I'm genuinely, like, most of these stories I haven't thought about in years. I think about this one all the time. I couldn't eat chili or hot dogs for a year. I will say a version of the name that we learned it as. I will not say the real name of it, but welcome to look it up and see if it scares you. I recommend listening to it on tape because at my elementary school, every year from first grade up, we had to listen to it on tape in the month of October. Our librarian had an armadillo tail hanging from the ceiling, and kids would cry. We would ask you to go to the bathroom. We'd ask not to listen to this story, and the teachers would say, no, you're gonna listen to it. I left that elementary school after first grade, so it's supposed to be one of those things where in first grade it scares you to tears, and then every year you listen to it, so by the time you're in sixth grade it's a silly, funny little thing. It is not silly and not funny. Oh, and it is something I'm terrified of. But the story is called Tailybone. There's actually multiple titles, but that's the version we learned. I'm a grown adult. I have grown adult friends who I told this story to in elementary school who text me every once in a while and are like, I'm still afraid of that. I'm still terrified because of that story. So if you are a little too old for scary stories, I recommend finding a story like that on tape and playing it for a young child because they might remember it for the rest of their lives. And that's the best kind of scary story. But yeah, I am not telling it today. because I'm scared of saying the name out loud. That's how scary it is. So, again, recommend listening to it when you're scared. If you're someone who's of legal age and in a legal state, and you're not a super scaredy cat, I recommend popping a couple edibles, listening to that on tape, tweaking out. If you are someone who is a scaredy cat, listen to it home alone and in the dark. I'll see if I can find a version to listen to. I wouldn't even say the version of the name I just told y'all until an adult in my 20s. And I will give a quick summary. So if you don't want spoilers, you can skip the next 20 seconds. Although this isn't really a spoiler. Basically, the moral of the story, especially to tell to first graders, is that even when the sun comes out and the lights turn on, the evil thing can and will still find you. Is my time up? Awesome! And that's pretty much it for my video. So I hope you enjoyed the stories or having something playing while you watch YouTube. And I hope you sleep well tonight.